The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction, with representatives from 847 different species gathered in their designated floating platforms. The air hummed with translation devices, working overtime to convert thousands of different languages and communication methods into something resembling universal understanding. Ambassador Zixter stood at the central podium with his 4 arms spread wide in what his species considered a gesture of grave importance. His skin shifted through various shades of purple and red to emphasize the seriousness of his words as he addressed the assembled masses. The humans had gone too far. That was the core message Zixter wanted to convey to every single representative in the chamber. For 300 cycles, the younger species had been expanding outward from their small blue world with alarming speed and unsettling confidence. They established colonies on worlds the Council had deemed uninhabitable. They built stations in nebulas that disrupted sensor equipment. They sent their ships through regions of space marked as dangerous without asking permission or showing proper respect to the established order of things. But the final insult came too. Cycles ago, when a human merchant vessel completely ignored a Council blockade around the disputed Terminus sector. The ship captain had simply looked at the Council enforcement fleet and asked if they needed directions to somewhere. When informed they were conducting official Council business and the humans should leave immediately, the captain had laughed. Actually laughed. Then the human ship jumped away using some kind of drive technology that left the Council vessels looking at empty space for several minutes before their sensors even registered the departure. Zix. Thor recounted this story with as much dramatic weight as he could manage. His voice boomed through the translation systems. His words painted humanity as a reckless and dangerous element in the otherwise orderly galactic community. The other species listened with varying degrees of attention. Some seemed genuinely concerned, while others appeared more interested in their own private conversations or the strange devices many of them carried. After speaking for what he considered an appropriate amount of time, Zixter called for the vote. The motion was simple and direct. The Galactic Council would formally declare humanity a threat to peace and order. A state of war would exist between the Council and all human territories until such time as the humans agreed to follow proper protocols and show appropriate respect to their betters. The vote took less than an hour. 847 species voted in favor. 0 voted against. 3 abstained, but only because their representatives had fallen asleep during the proceedings and nobody wanted to wake them. Zixter felt a surge of satisfaction as the declaration became official. Surely now, the humans would understand their place in the universe. Meanwhile, on Earth, in the city of Geneva, inside the gleaming tower of Fleet, Command Headquarters Admiral Jake Morrison sat at his desk with a cup of coffee in one hand and a datapad in the other. The coffee was from the good machine down on the 3rd floor that actually knew how to make a proper brew, instead of the horrible excuse for coffee that came from the machine near his office. The datapad displayed the morning reports, which included everything from supply requisitions to diplomatic messages to maintenance schedules. For the orbital platforms, he scrolled through the list with practiced efficiency until one message caught his eye. It came from the automated monitoring station near the galactic rim that kept track of official Council communications. The subject line read, "Formal declaration of war from Galactic Council," with a priority marker that someone had set to medium importance. Jake took a sip of his coffee and opened the message. He read through the formal language and dramatic pronouncements with the same expression he wore when reading the cafeteria menu. The Council declared humanity a threat. They demanded immediate compliance with their authority. They promised swift and overwhelming military action if humans did not withdraw from disputed territories and accept Council governance over their expansion. He read it twice, just to make sure he understood it correctly. Then he forwarded the entire message to his assistant, Lieutenant Amy Rogers, with a short note attached asking her to add it to the pile of things they needed to address at some point. He made a mental note to bring it up at the next staff meeting, which was scheduled for Thursday, assuming nothing more important came up. Amy received the message while she was organizing files in the outer office. She glanced at it and added it to a folder labeled Diplomatic, correspondence that already contained about 40 other messages from various alien governments. Most of them were complaints about human ships not following proper traffic patterns, or requests for humans to stop using certain shipping lanes, or demands that humans pay fees for crossing through territorial space. She made sure the war declaration was properly filed and dated, then went back to arguing with the supply department about why Fleet Command needed better coffee. Machines out in the colonies scattered across 200 star systems. The news of the war declaration spread through official channels with the speed of a particularly lazy bureaucracy. On the agricultural world of New Arizona, Governor Lisa Bennett received the notification during breakfast. She read it while eating toast and drinking orange juice. Her main reaction was to wonder if this would affect the upcoming harvest festival scheduled for next month. She made a note to ask the security chief if they needed to do anything special, then went back to reviewing the plans for the festival parade. The mining station Epsilon 7 orbited a resource-rich asteroid in a System 12 jumps from Earth. Foreman Greg Palmer got the war notification on his work tablet while he was standing in the main break room arguing with 3 of his crew members about last night's football game. The message popped up as a priority alert, which meant he had to acknowledge it before his tablet would let him do anything else. He tapped the acknowledge button without reading past the first line, then jumped back into the argument about whether the referee had made the right call in the fourth quarter. On Earth, the major news networks picked up the story around mid-morning. The headline writers struggled to make it sound interesting enough to compete with the other stories of the day. One network led with Galactic Council declares war on humanity, but placed it as their 6th story right after a piece about a new restaurant opening in Paris and just before a feature about advances in household robotics. Another network mentioned it briefly during their midday summary before moving on to an extended segment about the new faster-than-light subway system that would connect major cities across 3 continents. Social media picked up the story with slightly more enthusiasm. People shared the news with comments ranging from, "Are we supposed to be worried about this?" to, "Wait, we have a Galactic Council too, does this mean I still have to go to work tomorrow?" A few users tried to start serious discussions about the implications of interstellar war, but most people were more interested in posting pictures of their pets or arguing about entertainment shows. Back at the Galactic Council headquarters, Zixter prepared for the military phase of their operation with confidence. He reviewed the fleet dispositions and approved the battle plans with satisfaction. Soon, the humans would learn respect. The Council Armada assembled in the void between stars with military precision that had taken decades to perfect. 50,000 warships from dozens of different species formed up in their designated attack formations, with the largest and most powerful vessels at the center and the smaller, faster ships arranged in protective screens around the flanks. Fleet Commander Calcith observed the assembled might from the bridge of his flagship and felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Never before had the Council assembled such overwhelming force against a single target. The humans would see this armada and understand immediately that resistance was futile. Calcith had chosen the human colony of Meridian as the first target for several strategic reasons. The colony sat on a valuable trade route and served as a regional hub for human commercial activity. Taking Meridian would cut off several other colonies from easy resupply and demonstrate Council power in a way that could not be ignored. Intelligence reports indicated the colony was lightly defended with perhaps a few orbital platforms and maybe 1 or 2 patrol ships. If the humans had bothered to assign any military presence at all, the colonists numbered around 2 million, which was large enough to matter but small enough that the Council could offer generous terms of surrender without looking weak. The Armada jumped into the Meridian system with weapons charged and shields at maximum. Calcith expected to find the colonists panicking or perhaps attempting a hasty evacuation. Instead, his sensors detected a single human frigate in orbit around the colony world. Just one ship. The vessel was called Wayfarer, according to the identification beacon, and appeared to be a standard human design about 300 meters long with no particularly impressive weapons or defenses visible on the hull. Calcith opened a communication channel to the human ship. The face that appeared on his view screen belonged to a human male who looked to be in his middle years, with dark hair starting to show gray at the temples and an expression of mild annoyance. The human wore a casual uniform jacket that looked like he had thrown it on in a hurry. Captain Ben Hughes of the Wayfarer listened to Cal's formal demand for surrender with the expression of someone being interrupted during something important. Behind Ben, the council commander could see what appeared to be a personal quarters with colorful decorations visible in the background. Calcith delivered his ultimatum with appropriate gravity. The colony would surrender immediately and accept council authority or face overwhelming military force. The human captain had exactly 10 minutes to respond. Ben looked off screen at something Calcith could not see, and then back at the communication pickup. He informed the council commander that he was currently in the middle of his daughter's birthday party via video call and asked if they could possibly do this later. Perhaps tomorrow afternoon would work better. He could check his schedule and get back to them with a convenient time. Calcith felt his equivalent of blood pressure rising. The human was mocking him. This was clearly some kind of psychological tactic meant to unsettle the council forces before the battle. He terminated the communication and gave the order to open fire. 50,000 warships unleashed their weapons in a coordinated strike designed to overwhelm any possible defense. Energy beams and missile volleys, and exotic weapon types that most species had never even heard of, all converged on the single human frigate. The Wayfarer did not move. The ship did not raise shields or return fire or take any evasive action whatsoever. For exactly 3 seconds, the council weapons streaked toward their target. Then the automated defense grid activated. Nobody on the council side had detected the defense satellites. The objects were small and cold and designed with stealth characteristics that made them nearly invisible to standard sensors. There were hundreds of them scattered throughout the orbital space around Meridian, positioned with mathematical precision to create overlapping fields of fire. When they activated, the results were immediate and devastating. The first wave of council weapons vanished, simply ceased to exist as point defense systems intercepted every single incoming projectile and beam with casual efficiency. The defense satellites then returned fire with weapons that operated on principles the council scientists would spend years trying to understand. Ships began disappearing from Calcith's tactical display at an alarming rate. Shields that could withstand the output of a small star collapsed under focused fire. Hulls made from alloys stronger than diamond shattered like glass. Entire squadrons went dark in seconds. Calcith shouted orders to his fleet. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire. Concentrate all weapons on the human frigate. His commanders tried their best to execute the orders, but the battle was unlike anything in their training or experience. The human defense systems tracked every ship with perfect accuracy. They calculated firing solutions faster than council computers could process incoming data. They maintained sustained fire without any apparent concern for power management or heat. Dissipation. Aboard the Wayfarer, Captain Ben Hughes remained at his daughter's birthday party. The video call on his personal screen showed a young girl of about 7 years old sitting at a table decorated with colorful streamers. She wore a paper crown and was laughing at something her mother had said. Ben had not even glanced at his ship's tactical systems. The defense grid operated entirely on automatic, with engagement protocols that required no human input whatsoever. As far as Ben was concerned, he was off-duty and the security. Systems could handle whatever was happening outside. The battle lasted 17 minutes from start to finish. 3,000 council ships were disabled or destroyed outright. Another 5,000 sustained damage severe enough that they could not continue combat operations. The rest of the armada fled in complete disorder, with ships jumping to random coordinates just to escape the kill zone. Calcith's flagship was among the survivors, but only because he had been positioned in the rear command group rather than the forward assault elements. the council commander, sat in his chair staring at damage reports and casualty figures that kept climbing as rescue operations continued. His military career was over. He knew that without question. But more than his personal fate, he worried about the implications of what had just happened. The humans had destroyed an armada with automated defenses. They had not even bothered to have human operators control the weapons. The frigate captain had been at a birthday party throughout the entire engagement. Kalseth filed his report with shaking appendages. He tried to explain what had happened, but knew how it would sound. The council would think he was making excuses or covering up some massive tactical blunder. Nobody would believe that a single human ship with automated defenses had done such damage. They would assume he had encountered a massive, hidden fleet or walked into some kind of trap that showed evidence of advance. Warning. On Meridian, the colonists went about their daily business largely unaware that anything had happened. The defense grid had engaged and neutralized a threat. That was what it was designed to do. A few people noticed the debris field forming in high orbit and filed reports with the colonial administration, asking if someone was going to clean that up. The debris might interfere with commercial shipping traffic after all. Back on Earth, the incident made page 3 of the major news feeds. Admiral Jake Morrison read the report over his lunch break. He sent an official memo to Captain Ben Hughes, reminding him that while the engagement was justified, he still needed to fill out the proper paperwork for discharge of defensive weapons. Standard procedure required documentation even for automated systems. The memo included the relevant forms and a deadline for submission. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened with an urgency that had not been seen in living memory. Ambassador Zixter stood before the assembled representatives, looking considerably less confident than he had during the war declaration. The defeat at Meridian had shocked every species in the Council, but Zixter insisted it was merely a setback. The humans had clearly received advance warning of the attack and assembled hidden forces to ambush the fleet. Such deception only proved how dangerous they truly were and why the Council needed to respond with even greater force. The Council agreed to assemble the Grand Armada. This fleet would dwarf the force sent to Meridian by a factor of 5. 250,000 warships would strike at multiple human colonies simultaneously. The humans could not possibly defend everywhere at once. Their trick at Meridian would not save them from overwhelming numbers attacking on dozens of fronts. Fleet commanders from every major council species volunteered to lead battle groups. The military leadership promised complete victory within one cycle. The Grand Armada took 3 weeks to fully assemble and organize. Supply chains stretched across half the galaxy to support the massive fleet. Diplomatic channels burned with messages as council members coordinated their contributions and argued over command structures. The entire operation consumed resources on a scale that strained even the vast council economy. But everyone agreed it was necessary. Humanity had to be brought to heel. On the human colony world of New Portland, the weather was particularly nice for this time of year. The settlement had been established only 15 years earlier, and still had that frontier feel, where everyone knew everyone else in community. Events drew almost the entire population. The main commercial district consisted of about 30 shops and businesses, clustered around a central plaza with residential areas spreading outward in neat, organized blocks Karen Price managed. One of the retail stores in the plaza, the store sold general goods and supplies with a focus on items colonists needed for daily life. She had been preparing for a major inventory delivery scheduled to arrive that afternoon. The shipment included everything from food supplies to clothing to tools and electronics. Karen had spent the morning organizing the stockroom to make space for the incoming goods. The orbital bombardment began at exactly noon local time. The Grand Armada had arrived in the system and immediately commenced firing on the colony. Without bothering with surrender demands or warnings, Council commanders had learned from Meridian that talking to humans was pointless. Better to strike hard and fast before the humans could activate whatever hidden defenses they possessed. The bombardment disrupted the automated delivery systems that were supposed to bring Karen's inventory shipment down from orbit. Her datapad pinged with a notification that the delivery would be delayed. indefinitely due to unspecified complications in the orbital transfer zone. Kieran read the message with growing irritation. This was the third time in 2 months that deliveries had been delayed. The supply company was supposed to be reliable, but lately their service had been terrible. She filed a complaint with the Colonial Administration, using the standard complaint form available on the local network. The form asked her to describe the nature of her complaint and what resolution she expected. Karen wrote that the orbital delivery system needed to be more reliable and that someone should look into whatever was causing these constant delays. She submitted the form and received an automated response, promising that her complaint would be reviewed within 2 business days. The complaint went through the colonial bureaucracy with the same speed as any other administrative request. It landed in the queue for Danny Wright, who served as the Planetary Defense Coordinator. Danny was a retired military officer who had taken the civilian position because it was supposed to be quiet and low stress. Most of his job involved scheduling maintenance on the defense satellites and filing reports that nobody ever read. When he saw Karen's complaint about delivery disruptions, Danny pulled up the orbital tracking systems to see what was going on. His screen showed dozens of foreign vessels and high-orbit firing weapons at the planet. The automated defense satellites were already engaging, but apparently not efficiently, enough to prevent disruption of civilian services. Danny sighed and activated the full defense grid. The defense satellites around New Portland were similar to the ones that had protected Meridian, but with some upgrades that had been installed in the past year. The improvements included better power management and enhanced targeting protocols. When Danny activated the full grid, the satellites stopped being polite about prioritizing targets and simply engaged everything that was not supposed to be in orbit. The Council ships started dying much faster. The Grand Armada battle group assigned to New Portland consisted of 8,000 vessels, organized into 3 assault waves. The first wave lasted about 12 minutes before being completely wiped out. The second wave tried to maintain distance and use long-range weapons, but the satellites adjusted their tactics and pursued the ships across the entire orbital zone. The third wave never actually engaged because the commanders saw what happened to the first 2 waves and decided that retreat was the better option. Similar scenes played out across 11 other human colonies that the Grand Armada had targeted for simultaneous assault. Each colony had defense systems that operated on the same basic principles, but with local variations based on environmental conditions and available resources. The mining colony at Redstone Prime had defense platforms built into the asteroid field that served as perfect camouflage until they opened fire. The research station orbiting the gas giant Titan 7 had satellites that used the planet's magnetic field to enhance their weapons output. The agricultural world of Green Hills had so many defense satellites that the Council fleet found itself outnumbered despite arriving with 10,000 ships. By the end of the first day, the Grand Armada had lost 40,000 vessels. By the end of the third day, that number had climbed to 90,000. The remaining ships scattered across 3 sectors with human defense drones, pursuing them like persistence hunters tracking wounded prey. The drones had been deployed years ago to protect shipping lanes, and honestly, most colonists had forgotten they even existed. The automated systems simply detected threats and engaged, according to their programming. Back at Council headquarters, the reports came in with devastating regularity. Fleet after fleet reported catastrophic losses. Commanders who had been confident and eager 3 weeks ago now filed requests to withdraw from human space entirely. The military leadership gathered in emergency meetings trying to understand how their overwhelming numerical advantage had been turned into a disaster. Ambassador Zixter found himself under increasing pressure from other council members. Some demanded his resignation. Others called for a complete withdrawal and formal apology to humanity. A few of the more militant species insisted on escalating further with weapons that had been banned for centuries due to their destructive power. Debate raged for hours until someone suggested using the stellar disruptor. The ancient weapon had been built long ago by a now extinct species and was kept in council custody as a last resort deterrent. The device could destabilize a star and destroy an entire solar system. Using it would be an admission that Conventional warfare had failed, but at least it would demonstrate that the Council still had power. Vote on whether to use the stellar disruptor was much closer than the original war declaration. Many species objected on moral grounds to destroying inhabited worlds. Others worried about the precedent it would set, but fear ultimately won out over caution. The Council authorized the deployment of the stellar disruptor to the Sol system with orders to destroy Earth itself. On Earth, government finally scheduled a formal meeting about the war. Secretary of Defense Patricia Cole reviewed the casualty reports, which showed 0 human deaths and minimal damage to colonial infrastructure. She suggested they should probably respond officially at some point, just to follow proper diplomatic protocol. The meeting got postponed when 3 key officials were discovered to be on vacation and nobody wanted to make major policy decisions without full attendance. The meeting was rescheduled for the following week, assuming nothing more important came up. The stellar disruptor moved through space with a convoy of escort ships that maintained respectful distance from the ancient weapon. The device was massive, even by the standards of capital warships, stretching nearly 5 kilometers from end to end, with most of that length dedicated to the charging mechanisms and power systems required to tear apart a star. The Council had maintained the weapon for over 2,000 years without ever using it. Engineers checked and rechecked the systems during the long voyage to the Sol system. Everything had to work perfectly because there would be no second chance. Fleet Commander Kalsith had been given command of the Stellar Disruptor mission as a chance to redeem himself after the disaster at Meridian. He accepted the assignment with grim determination. If the weapon succeeded in destroying Earth, then his failure would be forgotten. If it failed, then nothing would matter anymore because the Council would have no options left. The human homeworld had to be eliminated. Once Earth was gone, the colonies would lose their center, and the Council could negotiate surrender terms with the scattered survivors. The convoy emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Kalsith ordered immediate scans of the area while the stellar disruptor began its charging sequence. The weapon needed approximately 6 hours to reach full power before it could fire. During that time, the convoy would be vulnerable, but intelligence reports suggested Earth had minimal military presence in its home system. Most human defensive resources were spread across the colonies. The sensor readings that came back made Kalsith question whether his equipment was malfunctioning. The space around Earth's sun showed hundreds of massive devices in various orbits around the star. Each device was easily the size of the stellar disruptor, and they were all actively drawing energy from the sun through some kind of collection system. The technology was beyond anything in Council databases. These were clearly weapons. They had to be weapons. The humans had built hundreds of doomsday devices to protect their homeworld. Kalsith felt his hope crumbling. The mission was already a failure. Even if the stellar disruptor successfully destroyed Earth, these hundreds of human weapons would certainly retaliate and destroy every Council world within reach. He prepared to order a retreat, but decided to wait and observe. Perhaps the humans would not notice the Council fleet if they remained quiet and kept their distance. What Kalsith did not understand was that the devices his sensors had detected were not weapons at all. Humanity had been using stellar engineering technology for 3 decades. The sun was not just a source of light and heat, but a vast reservoir of fusion energy that could be harvested and distributed throughout the solar system and beyond. The collection platforms used carefully controlled magnetic fields to siphon material from the sun's outer layers and process it into usable fuel. Commander Steve Bailey worked on Orbital Industrial Platform 7, which was one of the mid-sized collection facilities. His job involved monitoring the automated harvesting systems and making sure the energy flow remained stable. It was usually boring work that required attention to detail but not much excitement. Steve had been doing this job for 5 years and was good at it. The automated monitoring systems detected the Council fleet and the stellar disruptor as soon as they entered the solar system. The detection triggered standard first contact protocols, which involved scanning the unknown vessels and attempting to establish communication. Steve received the alert on his workstation and pulled up the information. The scans showed a large fleet of alien ships with one particularly big vessel that appeared to be charging some kind of directed energy weapon. Steve assumed they were potential customers. New species discovered human space fairly regularly, and many of them were interested in purchasing fusion technology or energy supplies. The charging weapon was probably their version of a battery or power storage system. Maybe they wanted to see a demonstration of how the collection platforms worked. Steve pulled up the sales information package that the company provided for exactly these situations. He sent a standard greeting message to the alien fleet, introducing himself as a representative of Solar Unlimited and offering assistance with their energy needs. The message included a comprehensive brochure explaining the various products and services available. Steve also attached a promotional code that would give them 10% off their first order. The sales department liked when platform workers drummed up new business and sometimes gave bonuses for successful referrals. The council fleet did not respond to the message. Calcith it 3 times trying to understand if it was some kind of trick or psychological warfare. The human was offering to sell them energy, offering a discount. As if the stellar disruptor was not currently charging up to destroy their entire planet, the casual tone of the message was somehow more unsettling than any threat could have been. The stellar disruptor reached full charge. Calcith gave the order to fire. The weapon unleashed its full power in a directed beam that would normally cause a star to become unstable and eventually explode. The beam struck the sun exactly as designed. The energy poured into the stellar mass. And then something unexpected happened. The collection platforms detected the incoming energy and automatically adjusted their harvesting fields to capture it. The stellar disruptor was essentially a massive battery discharging all of its stored power at once. The human collection technology was designed to harvest energy from a star that produced incomprehensibly more power every second. Absorbing the stellar disruptor's output was trivial. The platform simply treated it as a surge in available energy and distributed it. Through the solar system's power grid in New York City, the power management systems registered an unexpected surplus of energy. The automated distribution networks routed the excess power to storage facilities and reduced output from other generation sources to compensate. The surplus was enough to keep the city's lights running at full capacity for 3 days, without needing to draw from the sun at all. The power company's accounting systems registered the bonus energy and flagged. It is an unusual event that should be investigated. Steve Bailey noticed that Platform 7 had received a significant energy spike. He checked the logs and traced it back to the alien fleet. Apparently, their charging weapon had discharged directly into the collection field. That was unusual, but not unheard of. Some species tested their weapon systems in strange ways. Steve filed a report noting the incident and sent a follow-up message to the alien fleet thanking them for the energy contribution. Solar Unlimited's automated billing system processed the event according to standard protocols. Any energy deposited into the collection network from external sources was treated as a sale. The system calculated the value of the energy the council had provided and generated a rebate check. The check was transmitted to the alien fleet along with a thank you note expressing appreciation for their business and hoping they would consider Solar Unlimited for their future energy needs. Aboard the council flagship, Calcith stared at the rebate check in numb disbelief. The weapon that was supposed to destroy Earth had instead paid for the city's electricity for 3 days. The humans had not even seemed to notice it was an attack. They thought the council was selling them energy, or donating it. The thank you note included another promotional code for future transactions. Calcith finally understood the true scope of the situation. The humans were not ignoring the council out of arrogance or disrespect. They were not playing tricks or engaging in psychological warfare. They genuinely did not see the council as a threat. The mightiest weapons the council possessed were the equivalent of slightly convenient power sources to humanity. A doomsday device that could destroy solar systems had been casually absorbed by what humans considered routine industrial equipment. He sat in his command chair for a long time thinking about what this meant. The war was not just lost, it had never really begun. Everything the council had done was like children throwing pebbles at a mountain and expecting it to notice. Calcith made a decision. He opened a communication channel to Council headquarters and requested an immediate audience with the Council leadership. It was time to discuss surrender terms before humanity decided to actually pay attention to what was happening. Ambassador Zixter arrived on Earth with a diplomatic delegation that included representatives from 40 of the most powerful Council species. They came prepared for tense negotiations and difficult surrender terms. The ambassador had spent the entire journey composing speeches and preparing arguments for why the Council should be treated with mercy despite their aggression. He expected the humans to demand territory or resources or political concessions. He was ready to offer almost anything to avoid complete destruction. The meeting was scheduled to take place in Geneva at the Fleet Command headquarters. Zixter assumed this was a deliberate choice meant to emphasize human military superiority. The delegation arrived 2 hours early because protocol demanded punctuality when surrendering. They were directed to wait in a small conference room that had comfortable chairs and a table with refreshments. The room had windows overlooking the city, with no obvious security measures or guards. It seemed almost insultingly casual. Admiral Jake Morrison arrived 15 minutes late, wearing civilian clothes that looked like he had grabbed them from his closet without much thought. There was a coffee stain on his shirt that he either had not noticed or did not care about. He carried a datapad in one hand and what appeared to be a sandwich in the other. He apologized for being late and explained that traffic had been worse than expected. Then he sat down across from the Council delegation and took a bite of his sandwich. Zixter launched into the formal surrender speech he had prepared. He acknowledged that the Council had made a grave mistake in declaring war on humanity. He accepted full responsibility for the conflict and the losses on both sides. He offered the Council's unconditional surrender and asked what terms humanity would require. The speech took about 10 minutes, and Zixter felt he delivered it with appropriate solemnity and dignity. Jake listened while finishing his sandwich. When Zixter finished talking, there was a moment of silence. Then Jake looked confused. He said he thought this whole thing was a paperwork mix-up or maybe some kind of misunderstanding. There actually been a war. He pulled up something on his datapad and scrolled through it with a frown. There were a bunch of incident reports about unauthorized vessels in colonial space and some defensive actions taken by automated systems. But those kinds of things happen pretty regularly. Is that what Zixter was talking about? The ambassador tried to explain that the Council had lost nearly 100,000 ships in combat with human forces. Thousands of crew members had died. Entire battle fleets had been destroyed. This was not a minor incident, but a catastrophic military defeat that threatened the stability of the entire galactic order. Jake looked genuinely surprised by this information. He scrolled through more reports on his datapad with increasing concern. Why had nobody told him it was this serious? He should have been briefed on casualty figures like that. He made a note to talk to his staff about communication protocols. Then he looked back at Zixter and said he was very sorry about the losses. That must have been terrible for the families involved. If the Council wanted to file a formal complaint about the defensive responses, there were channels for that. Earth took diplomatic incidents seriously. Zixter did not know how to respond. The humans seemed genuinely unaware of the scope of what had happened. Either this was an incredibly sophisticated negotiation tactic, or the humans truly had not noticed they were fighting a war. The ambassador decided to try a different approach. He asked what humanity wanted as compensation for the Council's aggression. Territory? Resources? Political authority? The Council was prepared to offer significant concessions. Jake thought about this for a moment. Then he said that Earth shipyards were currently operating below capacity due to some scheduling changes. If the Council needed ships to replace the ones that were lost, the shipyards could probably build them at cost. It would actually be good practice for the newer engineering teams, who needed more experience with large-scale construction projects. He could send over some estimates if the Council was interested. The offer left Zixter speechless. The humans were offering to replace the ships they had destroyed. At cost. As a favor. He tried to explain that the Council could not possibly afford to pay for 100,000 new warships. The economic impact would be devastating. Jake suggested they could work out a payment plan. Or maybe the Council could trade resources or technology in exchange. Earth was always interested in learning about new scientific developments. He pulled up a form on his datapad and started filling in fields. What specifications did the council need for the replacement ships? Did they want the same designs as the ones that were destroyed, or would they prefer upgraded models with better systems? The conversation continued in this vein for another hour. Every time Zixter tried to discuss surrender terms or political arrangements, Jake redirected to practical matters like ship specifications or payment schedules. Eventually, the Admiral mentioned that Earth's government was planning to upgrade their defensive systems across all colonies. The current satellites and platforms were about 10 years old, and new technology had become available. If the Council was interested, they could purchase the older defensive systems at a significant discount. It would be cheaper than building new ships, and the technology was clearly effective based on recent events. Zixter found himself actually considering the offer. The defensive systems that had destroyed Council fleets with casual efficiency were considered outdated by human standards. What kind of weapons did humanity consider current? He asked about specifications and capabilities. Jake admitted he did not know the technical details off the top of his head, but he could connect the Council with the right people in the defense technology sector. He sent a message from his datapad and said someone would follow up within a few business days. The meeting ended with Jake asking if there was anything else the Council needed. Zixter said he would need to consult with the other Council members about the various offers. Jake said that was fine and gave the ambassador his contact information. If any questions came up, they should feel free to reach out. He was usually pretty good about responding to messages within a day or two. The Council delegation left, Earth more confused than when they had arrived. They had come to surrender and instead ended up discussing trade deals and payment plans. Back at Council headquarters, Zixter filed a report that tried to explain what had happened. The other Council members struggled to understand it. Some thought the humans were being deliberately humiliating by refusing to accept formal surrender. Others believed it was a clever negotiation strategy to extract maximum value. A few started to suspect the truth, which was that humanity genuinely did not see the conflict as important enough to warrant special attention. Over the following months, the situation slowly resolved itself through a combination of trade agreements and diplomatic protocols. The Council officially withdrew its declaration of war and issued a statement calling the entire incident a regrettable misunderstanding. Earth accepted this without comment. Several Council species purchased defensive technology from human manufacturers. The shipyards in the Sol system started construction on replacement vessels for the Council fleet with delivery scheduled over the next 5 years. 6 months after the war ended, Zixter found himself working as a consultant, helping other species understand human technology and culture. It turned out there was significant demand for this service since more species were making contact with humanity and none of them understood how to interact with a civilization that treated star-destroying weapons as industrial equipment. The pay was good, and the work was less stressful than diplomacy. The entire war became a footnote in galactic history, recorded as a mutual misunderstanding. That led to improved relations between humanity and the Council. Human historians barely mentioned it, except in specialized academic papers about first contact protocols. On Earth, the most memorable aspect of the whole incident was that it had interrupted Captain Ben Hughes's daughter's birthday party. That became a minor meme on social media for about 2 weeks, with people joking about inconvenient timing. Then everyone moved on to the next trending topic and forgot about it. The Galactic Council learned to be much more careful about declaring war. They also became humanity's largest trading partner and started sending delegations to Earth regularly to learn about new technologies. Ambassador Zixter eventually wrote a book about his experiences titled Understanding Humans, which became required reading for Council diplomats. The book's main thesis was simple and direct. When dealing with humanity, always remember that what seems overwhelming to everyone else is probably just routine to them.